This is very abstract, human rights. One should better address very simple things. Right for children to go to education. Right for women to equality and respect. Right for a person who is prosecuted to be defended and not to be condemned if he is innocent, if there is no evidence, right of appeal, right to have justice and explanation when there are persons who are enforced disappearances. This is very simple things, elementary. If you talk about human rights as a belief like that, it's very abstract. It's a concept. It doesn't sound...
There's nothing tangible.
It's not tangible. But if you are saying that you are against torture, arbitrary detention, every person in the world can recognize himself in this statement. So I'm talking about very concrete issues. I'm not preaching for an abstract concept.
Let me put you another question. Let's say, hypothetically, let's say France was going through the same problems that Nepal is, or France was in transition and was exactly the way Nepal is right now. And you were there. What would you do, or what would your role be?
First, it's very difficult to say what I would do in the position of Nepal, because I'm not Nepalese and I do not pretend to know better than you do what you have to do. But I just want to bring the examples of my experience. This is my 88th mission in 4 years all over the world. I've seen a lot of situations, a lot of conflicts, a lot of transitory processes. And I have to say that when amnesty is granted without elementary justice, without truth, it doesn't work. Look, for example, in Argentina, in Chile, in Cambodia, for Khmer Rouge, they had passed a few years ago, decades ago, amnesty laws. It didn't work. Because if there is amnesty without the pardon of victims, it will not work.
I think that this is an interesting debate.
Pardon of victims, pardon can only be given by victims. And victims will never pardon if they do not get truth. So the first step is collecting evidences and putting truth on the table. What happened? This is elementary.
And state has to ensure that.
Sorry?
State has to ensure that.
Of course. This is the duty of any state.
This is an interesting debate, even going on in Nepal. As you said, transitional justice is very important. The forced disappearance cases, or the victims during the armed conflict that we had, they are not ready to pardon anyone right away. They say, if anybody has to give amnesty, it has to be us. And maybe rightly so. But then the state, or the people who are heading the state right now, would say that anything you say right now about demanding justice could derail the peace process. Now, this brings an interesting debate. Peace at what cost?
It is extremely, you're putting the finger on the most difficult question. How can you manage this very difficult couple between reconciliation and peace and justice?
Or does reconciliation only mean amnesty?
No, reconciliation is possible. This is also what we draw from our own experience. We know, for example, we fought with Germany 26 times since 5 centuries. And now we are very, very close brothers. Reconciliation is always possible. This is a lesson of Europe, the message of Europe, even after the worst conflict period. But it has to be set on the basis of truth. How history is written how truth is established is key for putting the grounds of the society for the future. And there is a time for truth, a time for justice, and a time for reconciliation and appeasement. But amnesty cannot, if amnesty precedes truth, it simply will not work.
Because it's like sweeping dirt under the carpet.
Exactly.
It's going to surface
anyway.
There's
a blanket. We are talking about blanket amnesty. But it will not work. And this is not something I'm preaching with arrogance. It's simply the message I have learned from what I'm seeing in the world. I was recently in Libya, in Egypt, in Colombia, in Darfur, everywhere, in Baghdad, everywhere in the world. And I can tell you that all the people of the world, they want justice. And we now live in a global era. Everyone knows what's happening behind the borders. Sovereignty, yes, sovereignty. But sovereignty has a counterpart, is accountability. Why countries are sovereign? Because the basis, the very legitimacy of their sovereignty. We are a sovereign country as France, and we are sensitive to that. But we know that the basis and the legitimacy of our sovereignty is based on the protection the state grants to the people.
And sovereignty lies with the people.
Yes, definitely.
And it cannot just be government which is sovereign,
sure,
and not people.
Sure. So everyone knows what's happening behind others' borders, and all the countries are accountable. This is very important. We have change of era.
Since you have visited so many countries with conflict, you must also have noticed that a lot of states or the governments are very reluctant when it comes to bringing out the truth or bringing out transitional justice. Somehow we've seen most of the leaders are reluctant to it. Why do you think they're reluctant? Why don't they want to go straight away?
It is normal they're reluctant. I understand they are reluctant. It's very difficult because it deserves a lot of courage. Sometimes putting truth on the table means putting one's life at threat. And I have to tell you a very personal comment I draw from what I see. Political courage is more rare than physical courage. It's something very rare in the world. So it is very common.
The fear of losing that seat.
Yeah, but this is very common, what you are describing, and very human and very normal.
Because we see that in all parts of the globe.
It's very difficult.
Whether it be Europe or Africa, the degree might differ, but it's the same everywhere.
Yes. Look, we have been recently, France and Turkey, in a controversy regarding what happened in 1915 in Armenia. So this is it's not especially in Nepal, it's really problems that exist all over the world. All regimes, all governments are reluctant to take this kind of risk, and I understand that. But I have to say that putting a blanket amnesty without putting the truth on the table is preparing maybe violence for tomorrow, because people will not accept that. So it's not a good solution.
We've already seen 10 years of armed struggle because the issues of human rights were not addressed earlier, because some section of the society was always marginalized, and we've seen that result. And there's no guarantee that it won't happen again if we start keeping things under the carpet, or as you say, blanket.
But, in terms of human rights, state has duties and responsibility, but also all the society. It's not only the monopoly of state. All the society has to take every citizen has to take his part of respect of human
Sometimes
rights.
we see that the societies, or people in particular, they're so aware of their rights that they tend to forget their duties.
Yes, this happens everywhere. I can tell you, this happens everywhere. But I think that the media and education have an extraordinary role to play in order to prepare next generation. And new generations of politicians of tomorrow also have to be sensitive and prepared to this era of global respect. The lesson I draw from what I see in what we call Arab Spring, Arab Spring is not Arab. It is World Spring. It is spring of human rights, spring of respect. People do not accept now anymore to be deprived of respect. And the major issue is women's education. This is the message I want to deliver everywhere. If I have to set a priority, education of women, education to their rights. And I know that Nepal is doing well in participation of women in the political society. This is a very good point. I encourage, and this is really, I applaud to that, and it's a very good point for Nepal. But this also have to be at all levels of society. And I know that, of course, as in many countries, it is often that women are slaves of men. This is not Nepalese specialty.
It's all over the world. That
all
can be
over
fairly
the world.
said.
And I'm sure that the world would be better if women are empowered.
Coming back to you being a human rights defender as well as a diplomat, if you were to pick out between the two, which one would you choose?
Definitely human rights defender, but it's not incompatible. You know, because human rights are also rights which has been